And I think the time has called on the young people of Nigeria to come together and carry this fractured entity from the desert of despair to an oasis of hope. An oasis of a tomorrow that makes sense to us. But you just don't willy-nilly swag into leadership. You've got to work for it. You've got to work for it. There are no shortcuts. You must prepare yourself for leadership. And that brings me to my favorite subject, talking about my father. He passed 2 years ago. He was my best friend. He was my mentor. He embodied those qualities that I read in the Bible about saints. He humanized it for me and made it possible for me to realize that being a saint is possible. He was born an orphan. He died a king. The interesting thing was that sometime during the failed transition, my father decided to go to the Constituent Assembly, where they were drafting the Constitution at that time. Something remarkable happened. My father lost to the village drunkard. And the reason was simple. They said to him, you will go there and you'll be saying the rosary. You won't know when things would have happened. This one will go there, and if they say grab it, he will grab it. That was how my father lost the election. And he came home that night totally shattered. I was in SS1 or thereabout. But he told me something. He said that it doesn't matter that he has lost this election. It will not change him. The challenges you face should never change you, especially when you know you're doing the right thing. Count down to 10 years after that. A delegation of my community, my local government, and my state governor came to my house and pleaded with him to become the king. He didn't contest. But between the time he lost that opportunity to go and draft the Constitution, he was consistent. He kept doing what he was doing. He kept being truthful. He kept standing for the oppressed. He kept speaking truth to power. And when the time came for the community to decide who was going to lead them, it was a no contest. His story tells me something else. You don't have to follow the crowd. You don't always have to follow the crowd. If you're going to stand out, sometimes you need to go in the opposite direction. And that's what leadership is about. That's what leadership is about. Not all of you will be elected. That's the truth. But does that make you not to be a leader? No. Because leadership is about doing ordinary things in extraordinary way. You don't have to be a governor to check on your neighbor. You don't have to be a legislator to throw away your trash. You don't have to be a minister to be kind to your neighbor, to stop and ask the man in need, can I help you? That is leadership. Leadership is about you thinking of others. If you're here today and you're gunning for any elective post for your sake, you've lost it. Leadership always must be about the next person. And leadership is about doing the simple things. The simple things that ordinarily, you could just do it anyhow. A very wise man I admire said something. No work is insignificant. All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence. And he said something a bit more profound. He said, if a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep the streets even as Michelangelo painted, or Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep so well that the host of heaven and earth will pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper. This young man, Martin Luther King Jr., at the age of 25, December 1, 1955, became the leader of the civil rights movement by accident. Some of you may have heard the story of the tired woman, Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat for the white person and provoked what will go down in history as the biggest movement for change, biggest movement for equity that has transformed the way we look at human rights, transformed the way the United States is viewed today. He was just 25 and a poor pastor in a small church in Atlanta, in Montgomery, Alabama. But he applied this principle of doing ordinary things in an extraordinary way, and he made a change. If he could do it, you guys can do even better. And to bring this home, because oftentimes we think of the examples of what happened in America. In 1929, these women started the Me Too movement. If I will say that. They were the ones in 1929 that brought the colonial powers to its knees in southeast Nigeria. Nwanyi Merowa, who is represented in this picture, was a poor widow. And one day, in the heat of the British decline, they were looking for more resources. And they began to tax people indiscriminately. They've taxed the men paid. They came to her house. One Mark, Emowa, came to her house and demanded that she should count her goats and everything so that they can start taxing her. In 1929, a woman who did not go to school looked the representative of the warrant officer in the face and told him, no, this will not happen. You will not tax us. She was rough-handled. What did she do? She went to the market square, met the other women, and said, we need to do something about this. They went to the house of the warrant chief and danced around him for more than 48 hours. And they wouldn't go. The warrant chief, by the way, was removed. But it sparked off a terrible revolution in the southeast. From a local village in Bende, it went to Calabar, it went to Aba, to the whole neighboring cities. And what today is known as the Aba Women's Revolution, not riot anymore, revolution, started with the simple act of a woman who looked up to power and said, I've had enough. I ask you today to stand up and say to power, we've had enough. Thank you very much.
Just hope ahead.
Very interesting words there from one of the speakers at today's.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Very interesting words there from one of the speakers at today's event, Udo Jude Ilu, who's a country officer, Open Society Initiative for West Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be a 3-day event here at the Yaradua Center in Abuja, the Convergence, the largest gathering of youth candidates running for office in the 2019 general elections in Nigeria, with the theme Power, Capacity, and Politics. And of course, behind all of this is the Not Too Young to Run movement. This is the next phase. And the overall theme here is basically you've gotten the candidacy from your party. How do you win the election? What should you have at the back of your mind as a candidate? And this opportunity here is for the candidates who are seated here from the 91 political parties, 36 states are represented here, to listen to people who have run for elections, who were young and ran for elections and won those elections, the challenges that they had to face, and what they need to have at the back of their mind as they are walking into the 2019 general elections. It's going to be a very trying time. Honorable Nena was speaking to the candidates and said, you know, they had to get ready for two things. First of all, is the fact that not all of them would win, and that they would be the butt of jokes. and they have to know that what they plan to do when they get into office has to be the foremost thing on their mind. Quoting philosopher, psychiatrist, revolutionary, and French writer Frantz Fanon, each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it, or betray it in relative opacity. And that is the overwhelming theme today at the Convergence here in Abuja, the largest gathering of youth candidates running for office in 2019 for the general elections in Nigeria. It's a forum for people to network, get to know each other, plan ahead, have policies and statements that they would want to drive when they get into office, if they get into office in the 2019 general elections.